Hey everybody, Greg Underdahl here. I am going to be talking with the founder of Ice Fishing Minnesota and Fishing Minnesota Facebook groups, Andy Petterson. We're going to talk about all things ice fishing. Going to kind of get a little bit controversial too, maybe.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
All right. Well, Andy, I am really excited to talk to you again. We talked a while back. Gosh, I guess it's been about a year. We did a podcast episode that didn't really turn into anything. I wanted to revamp another fishing podcast. I that was really kind of later on. It's really kind of the direction I wanted to go with this. So I got rid of the idea of the angling uploaded podcast and just went fully with another fishing podcast. Pete is not here right now, unfortunately. I'm sure he's buried under groceries, but it is good to talk to you, to see you again. It's been, we had grand plans that we were gonna go ice fishing together, but that didn't happen. But we're both busy, and maybe this year we can. I should say I can get my act together.
No, we'll make it work.
So, how has your season been so far?
It's been all right. You know, it's definitely been some crazy times since we talked last.
Boy, you are not kidding, man.
It's ridiculous.
What do you think? And here's, you know, I'm not afraid. I've talked to Pete recently, just recently about this, my partner in crime. We're not afraid to talk. I mean, we don't want this to be a political podcast, obviously. This is a fishing podcast. But, you know, when you're out on the boat or you're out on the ice with your buddies, you talk about fishing, of course, and you talk about life. And I kind of want this podcast to just be very organic in that, you know, whatever comes to mind, things that are happening out in the world, you know. I mean, I think it's fine to talk about it. I'm sure it's on everybody's mind. We're coming out of 2020, and I mean, I don't know of a crazier year, but I remember at the end of 2020 saying to myself, I don't know that 2021 is going to be any better.
It hasn't been for me. I know that.
Yeah, it's just a wild. What do you think of everything going on?
It's a mess. But I mean, without having my tinfoil hat on.
I proudly wear mine.
I mean, it seems well too planned to me. I don't know. And I know that people are going to come back to me and be like, yeah, you know, well, this many people have died and stuff like that. And of course, like, I believe that COVID is real. Do I believe that it's pandemic worthy? I don't know. You know, and then the stuff with the election, I personally think that it all goes hand in hand, and yeah, it's a lot bigger than what we know. I think.
And that is exactly what. Just so you know, and when people are watching the video podcast, when I'm looking down, Andy, my computer is actually under the camera here, the webcam that you're actually seeing. We're doing a Skype call right now, everybody. And so Andy's looking at the webcam, you know, from my computer, which is below the main camera, which I'm actually looking at as I do the video podcast here. But so I apologize for my terrible framing, Andy, that if, you know, you got to look at me, it's okay. But that's not actually the camera. It's this one, this very professional, expensive camera here.
Your beard is good.
I just trimmed it for the podcast. But it's getting, man, I tell you, it's like my wife, she's, I don't know if she's made mention to the fact that maybe I should start like dyeing my beard, because I just turned 45 recently, and it's like,
really?
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, so we're going to be brothers, man. Yeah. I mean, it's really something how it's just like now both sides, and now I got like one side of my chin that's getting really gray. So,
I don't know why I got these skunk stripes, but
dude.
I just go with them.
It's
I think it'd be weird if all of a sudden one day I come out and all of a sudden they're gone.
Wouldn't that be something? And then you
Yeah.
just start becoming younger and younger.
Then everybody's just like, oh, you just for men or whatever that's beard.
Well, I know,
dye.
right? Like now, it's like the secrets are not the secret, but it's you've the fact that you've allowed it, and I've allowed it now to become, it's permanent. It's prominent rather. Well, it's permanent too, unfortunately. But it's like people now, if I dye it, it's going to be way too obvious, and I'll get too much shit.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna,
Yeah,
I can't
just
do
go
it now.
with it. Yeah, whatever. Just go with it.
So you were bringing up, to get back on the topic, the wonderful topic of 2020 and COVID and everything that has come along with it. And I think it's important to, honestly, I think it's important to, if you feel, here's the reality. Conspiracies are real. They happen. If you are a history fan like I am, especially through the Freedom of Information Act now, thank God for that, we know that the government has conspired in the past and done heinous things. I mean, heinous things. The CIA is heinous. I can't I can't emphasize that enough. Heinous. Okay, like the national security, I believe this fully, and it's crazy that we're going down this road. I'll nip it in the bud here shortly. But the national security state and very strong, this is my belief, the national security state and very strong, very powerful economic interests, okay, run the show here in this country, basically run the show in the world. So I already had that belief going into 2020, actually long before 2020 came. And so, I'm kind of like, I just, when 2020 hit, I was like, this, and then COVID, and I was like, this is, for a guy like me, dude, I'm very uneasy right now.
Yeah, it's some scary times. There's a lot of scary stuff going on with, with the COVID and with the election and with the, the race part of it and the police stuff, and it's all, yeah, it's crazy. It's a lot to take on. It's just that, for me, I try to tune it out as much as possible. Just focus on fishing and my family and stuff that I like, and just kind of ignore it and stuff. But a person really can't, even if you try to, it's coming in from some direction. I just, I was following the stuff with the Capitol, and, the newscasters were sitting there talking about how, it's so terrible. And, these riots are crazy and stuff. And it's like, it was like, they didn't even think that the people could see what's going on behind them. 'Cause there's nothing, nothing happening. There's just people kind of standing around. And I seen people carrying babies and stuff. And the news is just oh, this is the worst thing we've seen since 9/11. And it's how are you going to compare two planes flying into buildings, killing almost 4,000 people to, people walking in between velvet ropes and, and storming a Congress room? Come on.
I told Pete recently, I said, what's chilling to me about this is that they're saying it's a domestic terrorist event. And it's interesting that they're calling it, and just for the record, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a fan of Trump. But I also don't believe he's as bad as so many people are promoting him to be.
No, we've had worse presidents.
Absolutely, we've had,
and we've had more crooked presidents, for sure.
That's right. And so I really believe that, and maybe this isn't the best way to say this now, but you had in 2016 you had Bernie Sanders, which was really on the Democratic side, he was an insurgent candidate, if you will, or a candidate that was going against the grain, going against the establishment. Trump was as well. The media doesn't want you to really know that. right? Because the media is, and this sounds like something a Trump supporter would say, but it's true. I'm more I kind of consider myself to be a cross between a progressive and a libertarian. The reality is that the media is, I feel like they're in bed with the national security state, these very powerful interests in D.C. and just not just D.C. but these very powerful global interest, economic interest. But the national security state, I really see it as and the media are kind of like they're the muscle of these powerful interests. And so the media acts as a propaganda arm, and then the CIA, NSA, all these national security agencies act as like they're also in the propaganda, but they're also the muscle more. They're the ones that can really, they can do a psychological operation. You go, oh my God, Greg, you're talking about a psychological operation. You're crazy, man. Dude, look up what was going on in the 60s with COINTELPRO. I mean, I could go down the line. Look up Operation Northwoods, y'all. Look up Operation Northwoods. It's
the media is the scariest part to me.
Look up Operation Mockingbird. These are all real, okay? These are all intelligence operations that have happened in the past that have come to light because of the Freedom of Information Act. So I'll tell you, Andy, it's actually really good to hear your perspective, and I think we're in agreement here. This is just off, and don't let people divide you. Don't let an outside force tell you should be afraid of your neighbor because they got a Trump sticker, or they have a Trump flag. Don't buy into it. Don't fall into the trap. It's garbage bullshit. I'm telling you right now, they are trying to divide this country. And what I'm worried about is that they're going to divide this country. There's going to be more conflict. They're going to use it to justify more of a crackdown on civil liberties. Okay? What they're doing with social media right now is the biggest bunch of garbage I think I've ever seen in my entire life. So, you have got to love, I'm not a religious person, but love thy neighbor is a pretty damn good thing a philosophy to believe in.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's hard to get caught up into it with social media and stuff. And I think that there's almost like two worlds when it comes to this stuff. There's like the social media side of it that a lot of people get caught up when they're at home and stuff like that. But then when they go out into the real life, I mean, a majority of the people don't act like that, like they do on social media when it comes to stuff like this, especially. And I mean, we've had this discussion before, for a while of how people act on social media versus how they act in person. And, social media honestly brings out a lot of ugly, and it has in the last year or whatever, since this stuff started. It's really been a bad influence on people, period. And I think that the whole media has been a bad influence, and I hope that someday they're held accountable for posting or like broadcasting their opinions more than they are facts.
Oh man, I couldn't agree more with that. I couldn't agree more with that. I believe that our media in this country, our news agencies in particular, they're one of the most corrosive elements of our society right now. There's no doubt in my opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, with everyone being, we're venturing out now and for the past couple months and stuff, but when everybody was stuck at home, it was the only thing that they had.
That's right.
Was the media to look at. So, and that's why I kind of, like I said, I'm not some conspiracy theorist and tinfoil hat wearing person, but I there's more to what's going on than what's.
Well, don't worry, Andy. I am a conspiracy theorist, so I'll take that label and be tarred and feather for it. You don't have to worry. And you have every right to be suspicious of what's going on. And that it goes along with COVID. I think the world has lost its mind, but I think the world has been made to lose its mind, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's been aimed to that direction.
Yeah,
on purpose.
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
So okay, well let's actually talk fishing. What do you say? Should we talk some fishing?
Sounds a lot better.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so speaking kind of of social media, you started fishing Minnesota, and then tell me if I'm wrong here. Then you started ice fishing Minnesota, right? You started fishing Minnesota first, and then ice fishing Minnesota on Facebook. Those groups.
In reverse.
Oh,
ice fishing Minnesota, and then fishing or ice fishing Minnesota, then fishing Minnesota, and then hunting Minnesota.
So, tell me about how those got started. I know we've talked in the past, but in case someone hasn't didn't see that podcast we did a year ago or so, or whenever it was, talk about how you started the Facebook groups.
Ice fishing Minnesota, more or less, honestly started out as a kind of not really an accident, but it changed directions than what it was supposed to be. I don't know. I think we're 6-7 years old, something like that. Ice fishing Minnesota, maybe even a little bit older. And at the time, I was doing a lot of tournaments, and I have friends all over the state and stuff, and I was just going to create a group for us to be in where we could kind of share, information and tips and ice conditions and, everything you talk about at a normal bait store with your buddies. And so I started it up and got my buddies in there, and we were kind of chatting around, and all of a sudden just the invites just kept pouring in. And before I knew it, I think we had like almost 5,000 people within 24 hours.
Wow.
Something
That's
like
awesome.
that. So I, and it kind of made me kind of panic a little bit, because it's just like, what am I going to do with this? And it just literally kept going and going and going and going and going. So yeah, then I kind of had to take a couple days and just be like, well, what direction am I going to go with this? And what am I going to do with this? And, so I decided, we wanted it to be a place where it was, a spot that was good for the whole family. Whether you fish, every day in the winter or just, on the weekends or whatever. And a place that was like unbiased when it comes to products and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just blown up, and it's grown, and since Christmas, I think it is, around Christmas, we've been getting like 1,000 members a week.
That is unreal. That's unreal, man. Good for you, dude.
And it's because of COVID,
Yeah.
There's a lot of new people in the sport, which is awesome. It's been crazy, and it shows out on the lakes,
Right on.
I went to 3 different lakes yesterday trying to get out fishing in a place that wasn't super packed, and the parking lots were full in every single one of them.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No, that's so how many people do you have in ice fishing Minnesota and then fishing Minnesota in those two groups?
Ice fishing Minnesota, I think we're at we're just under 79,000. I think we're at 78,500 or something like that.
Wow.
I guess it changes all the time.
Yeah.
And then ice fishing or fishing Minnesota, probably 40,000 maybe,
Okay.
or a little over 45,000. And that one was created basically because the people from Ice Fishing Minnesota wanted a summer page.
Right. Okay.
So, and it was just like, okay, like you guys want that? Well, we'll start that. And that's been blowing up too. Well, then it went to, people from Fishing Minnesota and Ice Fishing Minnesota wanted a hunting one. So we started a hunting one, so.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great like social media success story. Because those are tremendous numbers, and then you find yourself having a platform, and there's a lot of power to that too. And it sounds like you take that power seriously and you handle it responsibly, and that's it's stressful. I know it's got to be stressful to a certain, especially like having to moderate some of these.
I'm so lucky, like, to have the staff that I do. Like, without them, I'd have a lot more gray hair in my beard.
What are like some of the nightmares scenarios? And obviously, you don't have to go through names or anything, but like just I mean. Because I know, I guess it's like part of the problem with just, social media in general is that, and I've been guilty of it. I'm not going to sit here and act like I haven't done this, and I have. I'm trying to be better. You would think by 45 years old that I would be a little bit more mature, but I mean, I do try to, I feel like I am getting better at this, but I find it interesting that, it's just like human nature. If you're not right in front of someone, it's like when you're driving in your car, it's the whole idea for road rage. You can swear at someone if that cut you off, or if someone's driving stupid, or, you're swearing, blank, this, and it's very similar in that respect kind of to social media. Like there's this disconnect where you feel like you can just be crappy to a fellow human being that you have no idea who they are, and you'd never talk to a person that way face to face,
Yeah, it's a lot easier for people to shake it off than, from behind the computer,
Right.
The most disgusting stuff that I've seen, it's probably revolves around netting and the natives. I know the Asian community has gotten a bad rap as well. A lot of the stereotypes, like, you keep everything, and there's a lot of people out there that think that the natives are out there just killing every fish they see and stuff. And yes, I mean, like the racial stuff. I've seen some pretty disgusting stuff. Has really
that
calloused my heart a little bit.
Well, don't let it do it, because here's the reality. There's a hell of a lot of great people out there too. It's just there's some really loud assholes.
Yeah, negativity speaks the loudest, and there's no way around that. I mean, I could have a post up that could have a young native boy with a with some walleyes around him, and that'll get so much negative attention. But then at the same time could have another post where somebody donated their house to a young child to get out and go fishing, and that one gets 200 likes, and the negative one over here gets 2,000 thumbs up or so, or whatever, and
right,
it's just
yeah.
But the thing is, there's been a lot more positive stuff that has come out of the pages, and a lot more positive people and helpful people than the negative people, which is awesome. I mean, we've located stolen fish houses, missing people, missing dogs, tons of stuff for the vets, and probably, I would be willing to say probably once or twice a week there's somebody on there that's donating, like a house or an auger or a depth finder or rods and stuff to kids. And that's the stuff that I really like to see, and that's the stuff that kind of overshadows the negative stuff that I see a lot.
Yeah, that is the beauty of social media. It really has, it really has it's got a negative to it, but it's ridiculous to say that there aren't a huge amount of positives to it, and that's definitely one of them. I think to be able to connect with like-minded people, meet new friends, meet new people, but also that power of really putting positivity out there, donating, charities. I think it's immensely important to not forget the impact there with social media.
Yeah, and another one that I've have seen evolve, and it's been pretty awesome, is the women in the sport, and we've always been very supportive of that. There's the women, the anglers of Minnesota, the WAM group and stuff. Yep. But a few years ago, it was a woman holding a fish, and there would always be the comments of on her looks or whatever. And I've kind of seen it evolve, where it's been more accepted, that women are out fishing by themselves and they don't have to have a guy with them to go out and stuff, and that's been really awesome. And I've noticed even just how the comments have changed. Which is good, because it needed to. Absolutely.
I mean, I've been thinking about this, a little bit. It's funny. It's just like recently, I used to be in a bass club in Pennsylvania way back in the day, and we had a woman angler in the club, and she was actually the best angler in the club. She was the best angler. Shout out to Lynn Rhodes. But yeah, she was, and I was this young whippersnapper trying to, make my way. I wanted to actually be a professional bass fisherman when I was younger. So I saw the bass club route, that was my first stepping stone. And Lynn, she was fierce. I mean, she was a hell of a competitor, and she was an excellent angler. So it's funny. There's no reason why women shouldn't be just. I find it interesting in the bass fishing world that there isn't any women anglers. There used to be Penny Berryman way back in the day, and Linda England, I believe her name was, in bass fishing. I'm surprised that there isn't any, even in the walleye world I might be wrong about that. There was one woman. Do you know who? There's one woman angler in the walleye world a few years back. But I guess my point is ice fishing, walleye fishing, bass fishing, tournament bass fishing. There's no reason why women couldn't really excel. No,
and they have been. They have been the last few years, which is great. And I don't see why there's been this big stigma towards it. I mean, it's not. There's no reason not to.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure.
I know plenty of women that are better anglers than myself, and a lot of other people I know. There ain't no shame in it.
Dude, it takes a real man to admit that, and I've always been pro woman, so I appreciate it, because
it is what it is. It doesn't, just because they have long hair and female body parts doesn't mean that they can't cast a rod.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. No, I'm right there with you. You were bringing up, not to go back, not to dive back into negativity again, but I did want to talk a little bit about the race issue. I feel real fortunate. I was brought up in a very in an environment where I was, my formative years, I was around all kinds of different races, in different religions, and Muslims. I had a Jewish friend. I had all religious backgrounds. I had a black friend, Jewish friend. I had one of my very good friends was a Vietnamese guy. And what's so funny about him, I'm not going to say his last name. First name's Jimmy. We were in the fishing club together. And this guy, man, he would bring High Times magazines to class, and this was in high school, like we were freshmen, and he was doing like hydroponics, in his basement and everything. I was like, this guy is unbelievable. I didn't do marijuana until like college, man, but he was like, he was like big into like hydroponics, and he was like a connoisseur. And this guy was a phenomenal student. He was a great human being. And in many ways, he's kind of ahead of his time with the whole marijuana thing. And he lives out in California. He's probably got this thriving business now in the cannabis industry.
Probably a multimillionaire.
Yeah, exactly. But my point in this is that I was around every race, and religious affiliation or whatever. And sexual orientation. I mean, I was in a church group. My stepdad was a pastor of a Lutheran church. Our organist was gay. Like you couldn't have any music in the church unless you actually had a gay music director. So it's like I think it's so crazy. Like when people get into this identity crap, and they don't see a person's humanity, like, is the number one thing. And I kind of have to be careful. I'm like, I'm taking this for granted because I guess obviously not everybody is like that, And when I get really upset when I hear about people losing their minds over the native netting. And the Hmong population, and I see these kind of undertones once in a while pop up on, and meanwhile, I've seen I've seen a ton of pictures of white dudes with wanton slaughter all over the ice, so proud of all the fish that they've caught and kept, And there isn't this outrage there, and it's just like,
oh, they get praises,
dude. It drives me flipping bonkers, dude. It drives me flipping bonkers. I can't stand. And going back to our original topic here a little bit, there are racists out there, no doubt. Okay, but what does racism mean? Are we talking about a hatred or an ignorance, right? And that's or both. I've known racists. I mean, I have known racists, but thankfully I haven't known a lot of them, like blatant racists, right? Those racists that I have known in the past are very ignorant, right? They're incredibly ignorant. And I'm not calling them stupid. I don't believe anybody's non-redeemable. I don't believe in cancel culture. I don't believe in throwing people in the trash. I believe everybody should have a second chance. Everybody's redeemable, right? Yeah. But I look at the whole racism thing as it's ignorance first and foremost. It's not being around different cultures. It's not seeing that even though someone might believe a different God than you, or the skin color's different. When you aren't ignorant to it, if you've been around people that are different than you, but you still see your humanity, you're not going to have these beliefs. You're not going to have this kind of thought that you're better than a race or your religion's better than another religion. You look at people as, okay, this is who they're this color or they have this belief. I'm kind of going on a tangent here. I got to get back to my original. I'm pretty sure I have adult attention deficit disorder.
No, I know what you're saying though. Like, I grew up in a very small farming community, and it was all white people, and it had always been all white people. And so when I grew up, I heard a lot of of racism stuff, and we didn't, a lot of racist stuff, but we didn't have a mixed culture at all. So it was, I don't think that it was a thing of hatred per se, like I don't think that they would go out and like hurt somebody, because of this, or specifically like not like, a different race because of it. But I think that it was just more of like you said, like an ignorance and like not being around other people. And it was just something that was like grossly accepted. And it was ridiculous. And it went over into sexuality and all that stuff as well. I remember when I was younger, a black family had moved into town and they caught all sorts of flack, in school and stuff. They were great, very, very nice people, great people. And I had been into many physical fights because somebody would drop the N-bomb at them and I was around, and I kick their ass.
Like, yeah. What was it about?
I talk to people like that.
Yeah. That's interesting because I kind of had a similar situation when I grew up in a little town of 900 people, and there was I remember a black family moved into that town when, it was predominantly just white people in the town. So like vastly just, white people. So a black family moved in and it was kind of like, what, to this community, like what's going on here? These people don't look like, and that's it's human nature partly, well, it is human nature, not partly, it's human nature to be like, what?
I think people feel threatened, like that there's going to be like this big takeover, and I don't.
Yeah. So I guess I want, like, what was it in you that made you different, that made you, made you stand up essentially for the underdog, for these people that kind of needed someone to stick up for him? Like, what was it about you?
It comes just the way I was raised, my grandfather was a sheriff in a very small town, pretty far up north, and right on the edge of the reservation. My grandpa had a huge heart, so he was. I grew up hearing stories about how he would help them out, during these tough times and stuff like that. And I was just raised to, if people are good people, they're good people. It doesn't matter if, what color their skin is, who they go to bed with when they get home. And, my dad's a very like stern person. And he raised me to know, like, if a person is a piece of shit, they're a piece of shit. It doesn't matter. They're not going to be a piece of shit because of their skin color. There's something that makes them bad. And it's not something that's just automatically put on them.
That's right.
Yeah, I just, you create everybody equal, give them a reason for you to not like them, at least,
Right. Yeah.
But for the most part, just give them the benefit of the doubt that they're good people, and you got to treat people with respect, and that's why if it was different in school where it was just an argument over something, whatever, I'm just going to ignore that. You guys go do your argument over there. But when I see somebody stick their head around a locker and, hey, N-bomb, like, we're going to have some issues.
Oh yeah, man. That just, even hearing that right now gets me boiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I respect that, man. I really, to me, that's a hell of a quality to have.
Well, when I was younger, my uncle, he was an artist, and he was painting baseball murals on stadiums. Like, he did the ones for the St. Paul Saints and down south and stuff. But anyway, I went up there went down there and stayed with them. And he would rent houses in wherever they were the cheapest, because he wasn't there very often. He would just go there and work, and then he'd be bouncing back from, Minnesota to New York to South Dakota to Florida to Charleston, all over the place, so he didn't care where he lived, and so he rented a place in like North Minneapolis. Wasn't the greatest neighborhood, and so I went and stayed up with them, or stayed down with them, and I went down to play basketball, and this was a predominantly black neighborhood, and I caught a bunch of flack. It was just like called all sorts of names and stuff like that, and it was stuff I never even heard of, so I didn't take any offense to it or anything.
Sure.
I just wanted to play basketball. I was like 11, 12 years old. So I sat there and just like watched them play, and it was actually pretty cool because it was a high school team that I was a fan of watching on TV when they had the basketball being played over the TV for high school. And anyway, so I was kind of in awe, and then so after going back a couple days and just watching them, then one of the players had come up and had asked me if I wanted to play. Well, a bunch of his buddies were kind of giving him flack, why are you letting this kid play and stuff? And he's just like, oh, he just wants to play. And that's something and then the more that I went down there, the more, they accepted me and I got to play with them and everything.
That's awesome.
And that's something that I actually has stuck with me for a long time. I did find the guy who helped me out on Facebook, and we've been trying to get together to go fishing now for a few months, and it's something it's going to happen.
Dude, that's a great story, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great story too. Like a definite positive of social media, being able to, connect with someone, find that person, and that's the beauty of social media there, But what a great story too, just to show like, two different cultures potentially, two different cultures, and you made an effort to interact,
well, it was just a shared hobby,
That's right.
like I'd never experienced, any sort of racism before. So I didn't think it's going to be an issue, and like I said, being called some names, like I said, I grew up in Foley. They call it Farmer Foley. When I was younger, they used our Farmtown Foley. Now it's like the Foley Hicks or whatever they want to call it. And yeah, so it had always been from the stuff that I had heard, it had always been the other way around, which, right. Isn't good.
Right.
And I knew I didn't like that, so I don't know.
But you kind of just plowed through, right? I mean, you just basically plowed through, and you're like, well, they're calling me names, but you know what? I'm just going to still do this and just make an effort, and then it worked out, and you kind of bridged, two cultures, and you saw like your humanity. You saw that. Well,
honestly, I didn't even know that the words were negative.
Right.
To be honest with you, so it was just all in innocence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have to I didn't look past anything, and I didn't, like I said, it was just all pure innocence. I just wanted to play basketball, and I think that's, they seen that eventually. It was just like, what, this kid's pretty cool. He has heart in the game, and let's involve them.
No, that's a great story. It's an important story.
Plus, they're high schoolers, and I was, junior high or whatever. So,
right.
I'm sure there was like, oh, a stupid dumb young kid and stuff, but I never got a chip on my shoulder because of it or anything. And they all ended up being very, very nice people.
That's awesome.
A couple of them went off to play in the pros and
nice.
And for a few years, and yeah, it was a good experience. I wouldn't change it.
What the kind of, I don't know. I had a experience. So I don't know, 2-3 years ago. And typically in the wintertime, things kind of get a little slower for me. So I've had to kind of just find jobs as a freelance videographer. I've had to find jobs just to kind of, fill in when things get slow. And I actually did Uber and Lyft for basically off and on for 2 years. And I would go into Minneapolis. That's where I drive. And I drove all over. I mean, I didn't. There wasn't any place I wouldn't drive in Minneapolis and St. Paul. I mean, I'd drive at North Minneapolis, whatever. I didn't,
Sure.
And I picked up everybody of every race and creed, and and I had wonderful conversations with people. Wonderful conversations. It was actually a great experience in my life. People that I would have never probably talked to, just because, where I live right now, it's, there's it's a certain demographic, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just like you see, people are human, dude. Everybody we have so many things in common. There's way more we have in common than not, right? And it's really interesting. I had some people that say, well, when they leave, I drop them off, they leave. Well, be careful out there, And I always kind of chuckled at that a little bit because I'd never had any really experience where I felt in danger except for one time. And that one time was with a white dude that was doing meth in the back seat. So a white dude doing meth in the back seat, and I took him to Lake Minnetonka. So that was, and I mean, I went inner city everywhere doing this job, And so, and the other bad experience, and that was the worst, but the next one was, I mean, a totally waylaid, drunk-ass white chick that the bar owners called me, where I had to, I had to pick her up. She's in the back seat, and I'm like, this woman is going to hurl all over the back seat, right? I got her to her house. I had to physically put her coat in her garage, and then I think I don't even know. I think there was a key, and I had to unlock to get into her house and get her into her home. And then I was like, I'm out. So I mean, I picked up everybody. 2 white folks that were the pain in the ass during that whole, So I hear sometimes when especially this summer, I've heard some bullshit racist things, and I hear stuff about Somalis. I'm like, dudes. First of all, have you even been to have you spent any time in Minneapolis? I'm not saying that there aren't problems, right? But it's really easy to think that the sky is falling when you turn on the news. And you got to be very careful of that. So, and just to kind of bring this thing full circle too, when I hear about the natives, people complain about the natives netting and whatnot. There's a treaty, y'all. Okay? There's a treaty. And reservations, in case you don't know, you need to look this up. And and it really ticks me off. Treaties, there's a treaty with Native Americans on these reservations. Those reservations are their own country, their own nation states. It's essentially a country within a country. Okay? So those treaties were made to say, yes, we'll give you, and it's such a raw deal in many respects, but okay, you'll have this country right here, this reservation. It's a country, it's its own nation state. You can do what you want. You can govern your land the way you want. And
after we've taken the rest of it.
Yeah.
We'll give you this little chunk, but we're taking the rest.
That's right. Yeah. So the level of ignorance there is astounding that most people don't realize that. So, there's how many lakes in this state, and you got to flip out, where there's some Native Americans who are netting. It's like, anyway, dude.
It was one of the early on days of ice fishing Minnesota. We had heard a lot about, people were talking about how they're raping the lakes and this and that and blah blah blah, and so we made a point to go up and hire one of the native guides, and we asked them, a bunch of the questions that we thought people wanted the answers for, and it was really good information. Everything was covered from A to Z on it, and we put this video out, and nobody wanted to hear it.
Of course,
the views on it just tanked, and it was like, because I think a lot of people already have their mind made up.
Yeah.
And they don't want to change it. And even if you can prove to them that, no, this isn't the way, it doesn't work the way that you're thinking, they just don't care to listen to it.
I mean, here's the reality. How many lakes down here in the metro that are just put in take fisheries that just can get completely decimated because there's more of a population down here, obviously, but there's also, I would argue that with walleye fishing in particular, there's not a great catch and release ethic, right? What do we? Is there netting down here? Like, what's the excuse down here? What's the excuse? You know what I mean?
No one seems to complain about the numbers being taken out of Red Lake, early ice every year.
That's right.
They just worry about, well, what are the numbers going to be next year for our limit that we can take home?
Yeah, dude.
And, we've seen it at Mille Lacs. People complain about that they can only keep one fish now. But 10, 15 years ago, it's the same people that were taking limits home every day. And I'm probably going to catch some flack over that, but it's true. It's what's the difference between some natives going out and setting up nets versus charters going out every day with 100 people on the boat, and them 100 people are catching their limit.
That's a great point.
It's not that different. It's not that different at all.
Yeah, that's a great point, dude. That's a great point.
I do think, like, especially after seeing the traffic this year, even in the summer and in the winter, I really do think that they need to do something about the limits and to lower the limits. And I personally would like to see a slot be put in place, on pretty much every species.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I just think talked about this recently. That frustrates me is that there isn't. In particular in ice fishing, there isn't the catch and release ethic, that I'd like to see. There isn't this. Personally, the reason I fish, and I enjoy once in a while. I don't fish to eat. That's not the reason why I fish. I love trying to go out, try to go out and figure out the fish, tempt them, feel that bite, the fight. See the fish, hold the fish, take a picture of the fish, admire that fish. Wow, this is, what a cool creature. Put it back in the water. That's why I fish. I like catching things. You know what I mean?
Sport of it. Yeah.
It's the sport of it. So yeah. I'm kind of just floored that there's just so much. There's this mentality in ice fishing where it's just like, it's more about keeping. It's more about keeping. Look at all these fish that I have laid out on the ice that I've caught because I am, that's what that really bothers me. I would love to have fisheries where, you could actually count on, even fisheries closer to more higher population centers. Like, I'm near Minneapolis. It'd be nice to have fisheries that are managed where you can actually go out and on a more regular basis catch bigger fish, but it's just like, it's really hard to do unless you go way far up north and you get away from, the reason Canada is so good is that, number one, there's 5 billion fisheries, but there's also very little people up there. And I'd make that argument for the Dakotas, the North and South Dakota too. There's less people there. That's one of the reasons I think the fisheries are so darn good. But in places where there are more people and there just needs to be a better catch and release ethic or better regulations. You have a better handle on that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I certainly don't have anybody or have a problem with anybody taking a meal. I love to eat fish probably more than I like to eat steak, but I'm not a fan of the freezer fillers. Every time it gets brought up, about lowering the limits and stuff like that, we always get the people that's like, well, I feed my family off of catching fish and I depend on this. And it's like, if that's the source you need to feed your family, like instead of fishing, maybe you should be out looking for a different job so you can just go to the grocery store like normal people. We're not in the early 1900s or 1800s where this is our dependency.
Dude, that guy probably has a freaking 2021 Ford F-150.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I'm driving a 95 Silverado. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, I mean, I know that there's a big, people look at it as it's like, well, if I don't keep these, somebody else is going to. And
really,
yeah, it comes like even to like hunting. It's just like if you're sitting in a stand and like if I let a buck go, like I think like, man, I hope it's around another year and the next person passes on it too. But people are worrying about the future of it. You know what I mean? Like,
and it really, I would say
harvest it.
Yeah,
and some people get selfish and greedy, and I just, people complain about the DNR stalking and stuff all the time, but then it's the same people that are out taking limits every time.
That's right. It's essentially the walleye fishery in this state is a put and take fishery. It's a put and take fishery. It's like when I lived in California, you'd have these little bodies of water. In fact, there's this one, like a pond that was a pay pond, like you'd go and they'd stock it full of all kinds of different fish. You pay like, I don't know, $20 to get in there. Uh-huh. And it was just like, and sometimes you had to work for them, but trout and everything. But it's like, that's essentially the same thing we have here. It's like, what a beautiful thing it'd be that if there was such a great catch and release ethic in this state, selective harvest where, yeah, they stocked, but you had the real potential. These fish could actually get to real, big sizes, I just wish that was possible down here when you're closer to and it could be, but there needs to be a better catch and release ethic, better regulations. Do you think it needs to be more of an ethic or regulations or both?
Well, if the ethics ain't going to change for a lot of people, I think it has to be forced, where it's just like, okay, we're going to cut the limits in half at least. There's no reason why one person needs 6 walleyes.
And that's how much
that is?
Yeah. And that's a daily limit, right?
Yeah, but it's also possession too. Yeah. Which is good. But when I go up to the cabin in the summer, and my family likes to eat fish as well, and we like sunfish, so to eat, and so when we go up there, I'll go out and I will harvest like a 20 fish mixture, and it'll be like crappies and sunfish together. But then and I'm not even taking a full one person's limit. Like I said, it's usually mixed with some crappies and sunfish in there, but I'm not even taking a one person limit, but I'm feeding my mom, my dad, my sister, her boyfriend, me, my girlfriend, and then usually like a couple other friends, and we have extras, so it's like, if a person can go out and catch 20 sunfish, 10 crappies, 6 walleyes, like, if they're going to take that all the same day, it's ridiculous. It's way more than what we need.
Yeah, so, I couldn't agree more.
So like I said, like my personal opinion, I would like to see the limits drop to, like for panfish, like 10, get a mixed bag of crappies and sunnies, or, either 5 crappies, 10 sunnies, walleyes go down to 3.
Yeah. No, I'm all for it. Well, I guess we'll start kind of moving on to maybe less controversial topics, because we've already blasted through an hour. How long do you have, Andy? I don't want to keep you too long. I really appreciate you doing this, man.
I'm good.
Awesome. I love these conversations, man. I just like real what we're trying to do here, and I've made this pitch to you before. But I just want real, candid conversations. You know what I mean? I just organic, whatever. This is probably an overused term, but I just want people to express how they feel. Just not. Those are my favorite conversations when I'm listening to a podcast or something. It just feels like I'm listening in on a conversation people might be having at the gas station.
Yeah,
or
unscripted.
Yeah. So, but we are into now the 2021 season, ice fishing season. And it's weird that we didn't have the ice fishing shows or anything. Extreme bummer there. I had a lot of fun last year going to the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show. But what have you seen? Is there anything that's kind of out there right now that you've seen in the ice fishing world that's kind of like really kind of tripped your trigger as far as technology or a new technique or anything like that?
Yeah, there's been a few of them, the Panoptics, Live Scope, the Humminbird 360.
What do you think is better as far as that on that Panoptics? Well, I mean, I could see. So I know how the Humminbird 360 works. So basically, I've seen guys use it on bass boats, on their trolling motors, and I can really see how, honestly, if you wanted to go full on freak, with equipment. Like you could have and you'd also have to be wealthy. You could have the Humminbird 360, which is basically a 360 sonar, which scans a 360 image. And so when you look down at the graph, what you're looking at is basically a radius around where you are of the playing field, if you will, which I could see that being really, really nice to know, okay, well, there's a boulder right over there, and I can see it. Over there's a grass line, or a patch of grass, coontail, whatever. I got a right behind me. I got a rock spine or whatever. So that's really nice. I'd see to show you the playing field. But man, like that Panoptics, dude, like that is okay. So imagine having that, right? So you have that in your bow. And then you have Panoptics, which then you can then sweep that whole area, go, okay, where are the fish at and what they doing right now? You could like a live, okay, that group is now moving to the left, okay, I mean, it would be insane. But when you bring that to the ice fishing world, what do you kind of see happening more? Do you see guys using, I don't think anybody's using both, but do you see guys using more of the Panoptics or the Humminbird 360 imaging?
I think that the Panoptics Live Scope is the hottest right now. As far as what I see on the pages and stuff like that. Like me personally, I don't want to carry all that stuff. I'm always trying to be as light as possible. I don't want to carry around a 6-inch cane with a big bag and a big cord and stuff. I think the technology of it is really awesome, and it's amazing. But me, I still prefer my Markham, just going out there and stuff. But I know that, I know that stuff works tremendously. Especially if I was a guide, I would definitely pay the money to get it. They're not cheap by any means, but, yeah, I mean, it's definitely changing the game, and the technology of it has just gotten crazy within the last, 5-6 years.
Dude, that live scope, I've shot a lot of bass tournaments now with guys using it, and it's frightening, like how good it is. Like, it's frightening.
I was watching a video last night of people using it for spearing, and like you could see the tines on the spear.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Like that's.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially, it's an ultrasound image. Like if when a woman's pregnant and they take an ultrasound of her belly, and you're basically, it's that same, I imagine it's the same technology. It's very similar. It's creating an image with sound waves, and it's a live image. And so you can, I mean, I've seen images when I'm at the bow filming with guys that have it on their, they're fishing a bridge piling or something, bridge piers, bridge abutments, and they'll sweep that thing. They'll sweep the whole bridge abutment, and then they find them. And then it's just like it's like all of a sudden on the screen there's an image of bait, or sometimes bait, but an image of bass, like it's. I mean, it's plain as day.
Well, and with the live scope, I mean, you can see like their fins moving and stuff.
It's wild, dude.
And it's really stolen the thunder of like, some of these sonar units with their like mega imaging. Because I mean, like the side imaging and the down imaging, like even them have got
mega. Who gives a shit?
But I mean, like the pictures have gotten so crystal clear that. It's amazing. And, do you think, go ahead. Maybe you're getting into it. Maybe you're, and then I was just going to say, and then there's another company that's just like, oh, like, come on with that here. We'll go one step ahead. And it kind of makes you wonder like what the next thing is, in which what I think it's going to be is I think they're going to scale down the size of these units, hopefully. Because I don't think anybody enjoys carrying all this crap around, but the technology of it is worth it for them.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I could see that too. Yeah. If you're able to, especially if like in ice fishing, you're able to downsize and just, make it more portable, more user-friendly in that respect. I could definitely see that as being a real positive. And I think you're probably right. That's probably where it's going to go, Do you think that there's any controversy in it? Is it kind of like cheating in your opinion?
I know I don't like fishing against them in tournaments.
Right. I wouldn't either. Yeah. I've seen it firsthand in bass tournaments where I'm like, guys that don't have it, I was like, there's been times where I've been with anglers that have it, especially on smallmouth fisheries. Last year, filming for Major League Fishing, everybody was out fishing offshore rock piles, right? And some of these rock piles would have smallmouth on them, and some of them would have billions, would it seem like, smallmouth on them. And then some would have none, and then some that had smallmouth on them one day would be completely gone the next day, right? These guys with Panoptics would go up on these humps and scan the hump. Oh, they're not there. Go to the next hump. Scan it. Not there. Go to the next hump. Well, no, they're here. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. And so then, if you're in a boat with someone like that, and then the next day you're in a boat with a competitor that doesn't have it, you're like, oh God, dude, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all depends on how people use them. Especially for ice fishing, we've had a few occasions where we've been out on tournament day. When they were allowed, where people would scan, because they can't technically be, the league that I was in, you couldn't technically be within, it was like 10 yards from another person. But then they would go out 15 yards and scan your school, and try to steal your school.
Wow.
And like that ain't right. And there was changes made to that league, because of stuff like that happening. But if a person's just using it as they should, and stuff like, technology's always grown. You can always, some people hate growth and other people don't. But it's going to happen either way.
Yeah,
if that's what people want to use, go ahead. Like I said, I'm more of a traditional guy, I guess. I like the hunt of finding the fish and just using my regular sonar and stuff, and I'm happy with that.
No, that's great.
But like I said, if I was making a living on it and I needed to depend on it to get people on fish, certainly, like I would use one of those.
Yeah, no, I too, I am really impressed with the technology, and I would use that technology. I think I'd feel better about it if there was a better catch and release ethic. Like I guess with that technology, I think for sure it's you're not gonna. You're not gonna stop technology, but I think it will give people an advantage. And if you can have more of a catch and release ethic in a perfect world, I think that would be better.
Yeah. It is definitely putting more fish topside. But even in my lifetime and your lifetime, we're not super old folks, but we heard the same thing when they come out with depth finders. Oh, that's going to ruin fishing. And then underwater cameras, I remember there was talk about banning them for the longest time. And that's going to ruin fishing. And you still have to get the fish to bite. This is obviously going to take out a big chunk of, having to find them, but you essentially still have to get them to bite. Like you said too, I hope that with the more advancements come out, people, realize that they need to do catch and release a lot more. Because the more fish at our topside it's getting harder and harder to replace.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely think, as we talked earlier, I definitely think, especially as technology fishing gets more and more sophisticated, that catch and release ethic is even more important,
I think after, especially this year with the COVID and stuff, and so many new people into the sport, I do think that there is going to be some darker days ahead, as far as catching fish. I think, especially around, the metro areas and the highly populated areas and stuff like that, it is going to be a big strain on a lot of the lakes.
Well, then we really got to figure out, how to tamp this damn thing, this vid down then, just to protect the fisheries.
Yeah.
I don't
during the quarantine times, I lived on a lake at the time. It didn't matter if it was Tuesday afternoon or Saturday. The accesses were full year round, and it's still like that. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is or what time it is. They're packed nonstop.
Wow.
And at least in the summer, it was boaters and jet skiers and tubers and stuff out there now. But I mean, a huge majority of people on the lakes now are just ice fishing. I mean, granted, there's some skiers and walkers out there and stuff, but yeah, I just, I can't, I can't encourage enough for people to practice catch and release as much as possible. And if you do want to take home a meal, just take home what you're going to eat that night.
That's right. Oh, man. So I saw this in the most, this is the Ice Fishing 2021 guide here from In Fisherman. I got to get my finger. This right here caught my eye as a videographer, and I've done a fair amount of underwater videography. Have you seen this thing? Have you heard about this?
Is that drone?
My goodness.
Thing?
Goodness, great. Now, maybe this is cheating, but I am thinking, okay, so just so I have to set the stage here. So there is this company called, in fact, I got a picture of it here too I can show you, but it's a company called Power Vision. And they got this drone, this underwater drone that's got an HD camera. You can actually even put a fish finder. I don't know if it basically just senses fish around the whole unit of this underwater submersible, but it has a fish finder. I've got to look more into it. But the thing is like $900. But honestly, a lot of my equipment in this back room is actually more than that, that I've accumulated through the years. And I'm like, boy, this could be really something as far as just getting some really cool pictures, and video underwater. Yeah. I don't even know that I would use it for fishing, but you could. I mean, that's why In Fisherman is talking about it. Let me show you this thing. I actually brought unfortunately, you're going to have to, Andy, watch this back. You won't be able to see what I'm bringing on the screen here. But look at this thing. So this is the top view that you're looking. If you're watching the video podcast, you're looking. Actually, no, I believe this is the bottom view that you're looking at right now of this thing. And the circular item in the middle, actually more at the front of it, is the fish finder. Right below the fish finder is this thruster, and then it's got two thrusters in the back of it. And so it's called the Power Ray. It's got a tether to it. You can if you want, you could have goggles attached to it. It's just like an underwater drone. It's got the same kind of controls that a drone would have. Here's another view of it here. So this is a front, you're seeing it from the front and kind of up. So you can see the tether coming out the top of it there, the camera at the front. It's got lights. It's really, really well designed. At first I was like, what the hell is this thing? But I'm more looking into it. It could be incredible for getting amazing imagery. But for ice fishing, I could see where it's like, okay, you drill a hole, and you're like, you drop. Actually, the problem with it for ice fishing, though, is you're going to have to drill. I imagine this thing is probably about 1.5 foot, something like that. Yeah. You're going to have to draw, do a few holes to get this thing down down into the water. But, I could see it kind of being, not kind of, it could be really interesting. If you are in an ice fishing tournament and you're pre-fishing, you can just kind of see the lay of the land, really kind of see what the fish are doing, just see the environment that they're in, just to kind of have a better visual of what's going on. Yeah. But as a videographer, I like it when people say videographer. I've had several people call me a videographer before. Cameraman, let's just call it. I'm a cameraman. But I see it as pretty cool technology. I guess that's more than anything. It's kind of ridiculous for fishing, but at the same time, it's pretty badass technology.
Well, I've crashed RC airplanes and RC cars and RC drones, and so crashing an RC sub would be the first for me.
Well, I can see it too. Like I was thinking about. Yeah, no, this thing's definitely. The first time I flew a drone over water, I crashed the damn thing. And it was just like it got in algae. I I took pictures of it, but it's just like the props are full of algae and it's ruined, It's like, oh my God, do I really want to get into this? Is this a hobby I really want to, I still have a drone, but I was thinking about doing it for a business, but I'm like, this is a little too much for me. But I guess it's maybe a little safer with an underwater submersible, but at the same time, I was thinking about using this for like St. Croix lake sturgeon fishing, to get some really cool. But then I'm like, holy hell, like the current might take this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's tethered, but at the same time, especially at different levels of the water column, it might get really dicey. So maybe that's not the best idea. I don't know.
Yeah, having $900 floating around underneath the water is kind of on a remote control is kind of scary.
Yeah, but it's pretty wild. You can actually do live streaming from it, which is pretty bizarre because it's tethered. The tether goes up to your control unit, and I guess from the control unit, that's where you can send the signal out to. So
that's cool. I know we used to drop GoPros down on and try to get them tripoded on the bottom. Footage, but then you could never like stream that. Couldn't do your Wi-Fi or have any of the controls or nothing of it work for that. So you didn't know what footage you had until you got home.
Right. Yeah, and I remember when the first GoPro came out, I was like, "This is amazing! It's an HD camera, and it's only 2 inches long, and it's this tiny little thing." And now there's sometimes where you can hardly, in the right lighting. I mean, it's a hell of an image, and then with the image stabilization and whatnot and voice controls, it's crazy how much they can get into those little cameras now. But they're in many ways a GoPro is a great tool for getting underwater shots.
Yeah.
So what going back to kind of some of these newer trends, I guess is the right way to put it in fishing. I see there's more soft plastics, little tiny microplastics, detailed plastics that are being offered. I see, Berkeley's got a full line of power bait, these micro soft plastics, which I think is really exciting. The
micro hard baits are
they making micro? Oh yeah.
Cool.
So so Eurotackle's one of them that's doing that. Are there more? Tell me about the other ones. You're gonna
Eurotackle makes some, and then Kender's some, and I mean they're the size of your thumbnail. Some of them.
And do you think that's coming from Europe? Is that like those really small kind of like plastics and hard baits? Is that because I know I talked to the owner of Eurotackle last year, and is he from the Netherlands? I can't remember where he's from. But do you think that's kind of coming from Europe? Is that, or what's happening there?
I'm not sure. I remember when Rapala come out with the number 3s, the smaller rip and wraps and the lightweight rip and wraps, and that was all the craze. I think that people just want to keep going smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think they probably will keep going a little bit smaller. I don't know how much smaller they can get, but
microfishing.
They keep getting smaller and more detailed.
And those are all basically panfish baits, correct? I mean, those hard baits are panfish baits, or are those really like maybe if the walleye are super finicky or something, or what?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to scale it down for a walleye, you could certainly use one. But yeah, it's mostly you just used for gills and crappies and perch. Yeah.
So speaking of those species too, like I'm noticing, and are they? I should know the terminology. In fact, I've seen kind of different terms used for these reels, but drop reels, straight line reels, what like the Black Betty, the 13 Fishing has.
Yeah, like an inline reel.
So what are the benefits of those reels? Like those have just come on the market here in the last few years. Like they're just on fire. Like everybody's got a reel like that.
Yeah, it's supposed to reduce line twist.
Okay.
Is the main thing. Tournament anglers have been using the old schoolies, and they're still using the schoolies ever since I've been doing any sort of panfish tournament leagues. And it, that started it. And then for a while there was a few years where guys were just using their fly rods or fly rod reels.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yep. And then, backing it with a bunch of tip up line and then putting your regular line on there because the spool was so big. Well, then, some companies come out and made the inline reels. But yeah, that's kind of the,
and that's the technical term. They're called inline reels.
Inline reels. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, if you ask, there's some people that say they're hype, and then there's other people that swear by them. I tend to like them. Okay. I still use old schoolie every once in a while as well, for the real finicky ones, and I feel like I have more control with the schoolie. But
pardon my ignorance, when you say a schoolie, and this just shows you, hey, I'm being open here. Okay, yeah, I don't know what schoolie is, so I got to get with the program, obviously.
I mean, it's just the basic plastic round reel, just a wheel. Then has a little plastic nut in the center, and
yes, okay, I've seen those before. Yeah. Okay.
There's no drag or anything on them. It's just control everything.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, I would be willing to bet that almost every tournament winner, you're going to find a schoolie in their arsenal.
No kidding.
Panfish.
Do you, so I know that I talked about 13 Fishing there what's going on with 13 Fishing? I really have no experience with that company. I think they're actually even based out of Florida.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I got to say, man, their products might be crap, but their marketing and how they're advertising, their marketing, how their products look, the packaging, the baits themselves, like what I'm seeing what they're offering in ice fishing. They got that Black Betty reel. They're dialed like it's at least from an outside looking in, they look dialed. Like I said, I have no experience with their products. Do you have any experience with 13 Fishing stuff?
I do.
Like what's your impression of it, or what?
When 13 come around, because I mean they're not an old company, and when they first come out, they come out guns blazing. They had awesome rods and reels and their clothing stuff was always really cool. They always had really cool pictures and stuff like that. Then they kind of slowed, in my opinion anyway, or from what I've seen, then they kind of slowed down a little bit for a couple of years. And then now we're kind of getting back into it a little bit. I had heard, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but I had heard that it recently sold to another larger company, which I don't know I don't know if it's true or not, but I do know that a friend of mine, Sam Moore, is their cameraman and photographer, and he does awesome work. And I don't know how much involvement he has as far as like packaging and stuff like that, but I know that he's at the top of his game, when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I've just been really impressed with just aesthetically. Not an easy word for me to say for whatever reason, but like I just like their it sounds kind of stupid saying this, but I like their packaging. I like how their names are kind of, I think it's kind of cool to name a fishing company 13. I think that's kind of ballsy. Yeah.
It's very they got a real sleek appearance to not only their products but just the company. Everything just seems like refined and smooth.
Yeah, I mean, I like it.
I have absolutely no affiliation with them like whatsoever, but they just seem to kind of have like a cool, calm.
I dig it, but I have no experience with their products, and again, I like the idea that they took an unlucky number, 13, and they're like, you know what? That's the name of our fishing company.
Yeah, no, just like any other company, they make a lot of stuff that I like, and they make some stuff that I particularly don't care for.
Yeah.
I like their plastics quite a bit. I like their spoons. Their rods are some of the better ones you can buy off of the shelf, as far as a production rod.
Right on.
And I do use some of the Ghost inline reels and stuff, and I like them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a few other things as far as like just important products, things that are kind of trending or whatever, seem to be big news in the ice fishing world. And I don't know what you would call these particular kind of baits. I've heard them called swimming jigs, like glide baits, rip baits. It's basically like a jigging wrap, like a jigging wrap, but there's a lot more companies now offering their version of it, and there seems to be more tweaks happening there with that particular kind of style of lure.
Sure.
Acme is making some Acme to me used to be like a trout fishing lure company, but. Yeah. And when I say recently too, like as an older guy, I've noticed that time goes by like at light speed now, so like this stuff might, when I say like it's the stuff happening right now, well, it might have happened like 2 years ago. And I still think to me as an older guy, age is relative, but like, as an older guy, like 2 years ago to me is like, that's nothing, to a young kid, that's like 500 years ago.
Yeah.
But these baits, like there's the clam Tika Minnow Magic is one of them. Uh-huh. I guess the moonshine lures. What's the name of that bait? I can't remember the name of that bait, but it's this kind of style too. Like, what's the deal with that particular style of bait? Why is that? Like, it seems like there's all kinds of different companies making their own version of that right now. Yeah.
They're great for early ice is when I've always had the best luck with them. And I mean, they do work, all year round. I was using them yesterday. But yeah, I mean, they've really taken off. There's a lot of companies, putting them out, like you said. Some of them are getting kind of weird looking.
Right. But honestly, I see them. I'm like, I wonder what that looks like.
Have you seen the Lindy ones? And not to dog on Lindy, but like.
No. Feel free to dog on them. Listen, if they need to, and I'm all for, listen, I'm not all for just pooping on people, but
well, no, and I'm not pooping on them.
No, I know you're not, and what I'm saying is, but if you think something's goofy or that you think maybe, just say it. I mean,
it probably, I'm sure it catches fish. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put it out. But
right.
But
that's
to me,
just so you know, I got to stop you there because that just because there's a product out there doesn't mean that it catches fish. And I love Berkley, and Berkley is one of my favorite companies of all time. Right there's a lot of companies in fishing I love, but Berkley's probably maybe the top. Right, they have put out some absolutely ridiculous lures in the past. I mean, there was lures, some of their hard baits back in the day were like, oh my God, what are they doing? And they didn't sell. So it does happen with some of these companies, especially if they have like bad leadership structure. There's people in there that don't know how to fish or whatever. I've seen it happen before. So anyway, I just had to bust your balls a little bit.
I do think that Lindy is a reputable company, especially being based here in Minnesota. that I don't think that they would put anything out that they haven't had success with at least some point of time, but no, it's just, and the only reason why I mentioned that one is because there's a couple holes in it that'll take water in and one goes out, and they're just a real weird shape compared to what else is out there on the market. And it's just like, I remember seeing it for the first time and it's like,
so here's the thing. So you got to tell me Andy, you got to tell me what that is, because right over there, I actually bought this tank. It's a 90-gallon tank I bought used from a aquarium place like in Minneapolis, just outside of Minneapolis. A year ago, I bought this thing. It's been sitting there. I finally cleaned the thing. It had algae all over it. Scraped the hell out of this thing forever, using vinegar and everything else. It's now clear and clean. I filled it up with water recently. I want to actually film, vertical presentations. I mean, there's some stuff I can do horizontal, like jigging on the bottom, but for the most part, it's a vertical jigging situation, Sure. I am curious, though, because you've talked about this bait enough now. I'm like, what the hell does that thing look like underwater? Maybe it looks like shit, but maybe at the same time, what's the name of this thing?
I don't even know. But you had the same impression that I had, right? I mean,
well, I've seen a number of them that I'm like, what the hell is like some of them got wings, like the Acme one. I don't know the name of it. It's got wings that like flap up.
Yeah,
it's like a damn transformer.
But I mean, when I'm standing in a store and I'm just like looking at these hard baits, they have all the brands together, and it's just like they kind of all look a little similar, at least. They're in the same ballpark. And then I come to this one, it's just like, it's kind of blocky and stuff, and like I said, I haven't used it. I'm sure it probably works, but it was just something that like kind of caught my eye, and I kind of had what the heck?
Oh, for sure. No, I don't blame you.
There's a couple of them like that. There's another one. I'm not sure if it's Acme or if it's at Kalen's or whatever, but they make one that kind of looks similar to the Lindy one. That made me kind of do a double take at it, and
there's just a lot. It's really interesting just how many offerings there are of that bait style now. Like it's just, I mean, just walking through Cabela's the other day, I was like, dang, look at all, like, and it is one of those things I'd kind of like to do a video where I'm showing what different, that style, what they look like underwater, what's the jig cadence you do with that? Just because I need to know, because I gotta like do, like realistic jigging cadences for those lures. Is it a rip and then you let it?
There's no right or wrong way to do it. I'll do a rip and let it flutter. Do a rip, let it flutter. But there's also times where I'll just hold it level. If I get a mark coming up, hold it level and just sit there and jig it. Just to twitch it a little bit, and it's all, kind of trial and error. You have to go with what they want. It's no different than, sometimes they want a bait being aggressive, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they want rattle, sometimes they don't.
Is the idea behind a bait like that? Is it it's an attractor more than anything? Do you tip it with a minnow head or?
No, for me, that's been the best tool for I've brought in more fish and that have hit in the dead stick next to me than I probably have off of the actual lure itself.
Okay.
So I use it a lot of times for calling fish in, but then yesterday, and granted it was pike, but
what, pike don't count?
Well, no, I'm just saying.
I'm just kidding. It is funny, though. They kind of don't. Let's be honest. Let's be honest right now. There's these poor pike, man. Poor pike. Only when you cross the border into Canada do pike finally get the respect that they really deserve. Yeah. Let's be honest. Poor pike. Poor pike.
Well, and it's kind of funny because like you go up to we got a cabin that's west of Bemidji, and a lot of people up there eat pike year round.
They're a great tasting fish. They're a great tasting fish.
I live in the same area you do, kind of in the St. Cloud area or whatever, and there really isn't that many people that like will go out to target pike to eat. It's usually just like, oh, I guess I'll keep that since I caught it while I was crappie fishing, or whatever. But no, up there it's like I'm going out pike fishing. I want some pike for supper, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I think pike are great. I actually like that pike were one of the very first fish that I'd catch when I was young. Going up north and just casting Johnson silver minnows, to rice fields or whatever, vegetation that's around. I mean, you could easily catch a hammer handle pike going in shallow with a Johnson silver minnow, and it was a blast, and I absolutely loved it. I was like, why isn't anybody doing this? Why am I the only one? But yeah. I love pike. I think pike are fantastic.
Yeah. No, and the pike, they love them hard-bodied baits, especially if they rattle, man.
Oh, no kidding.
They'll claim a bunch of them if you let them.
So I did want to, and I know, like, especially with Ice Fishing Minnesota, you might have some affiliations with different, products, different companies. But so I understand why this might be kind of more of a difficult question to answer. But I am curious, like, what is your opinion? Who makes what's that?
You get me in trouble?
No, I don't think so. It's not that. It's not that controversial of a question. But who do you believe makes the best portable ice fishing shelter? Who makes the best portable ice fishing shelter? I think I maybe said in the past. I've had some issues with clam. I actually have a clam Nanook, and overall, I actually have enjoyed it. I have a clam edge suit when they first came out, and I've not had. I'm gonna tell you this: if I had to actually pay for it, there would be some issues because it's a well-designed suit, but the quality of it is lacking, and I've found that on some other clam products. Yeah. So I'm curious. Dude, my hair is so out of control. I still have COVID hair. It's ridiculous, man. But I am curious. Like, I've heard really good things about like Otter, and I'm wondering about like Eskimo. I've always kind of been a fan of Frabil's stuff, and I'm not talking about their shelters, but their other stuff. I've kind of liked Frabil's products,
which is weird because they've been pretty quiet the last, especially the last 3 or 4 years. You really don't hear too much on Frabil coming out with different, unless I'm just not hearing it. I don't know, but they've just seemed to have been really quiet in the industry the last few years. Eskimo seems to be getting better and better every year. They've made some very nice houses. One thing I like about Eskimo is that they're not afraid to create something different. And
that's cool. I like that.
They do take some risks sometimes. With different products. Like a few years ago, they did the Evo series houses where it was like half sled, half hub, or half flip over, half hub. I thought it was a cool idea.
Yeah, I like that. That's neat.
Yeah, and I like it when companies do stuff like that. And then Otter, doing the side doors. Otter has always had a reputation for super tough sleds, super insulated. I use Otter, and my opinion, I guess, is Otter is probably the best built, and is what I run. But I mean, we were it was just me and my girlfriend, and we were in the the Resort Hub, which is like 12 by 12 by 12. It's like 5 big octagon hub. And we heated it. Granted, yesterday was like, upper 20s, but we heated it on low, like all day. And I was in my t-shirt, and
wow, nice.
My girlfriend actually took a nap on my rod, my rod box.
Easy now. Took a nap on your. I'm glad. Yeah, you had to finish that sentence there. I was getting a little nervous there. This isn't really a family podcast, but
But yeah, I mean, it's super comfortable. Even with Clam, I know they've made a lot of advancements the last few years. They build a good house.
Sounds like this guy's operating 2 very successful Facebook pages, so he has to be a little bit careful, a little bit political here. I feel like he's, just kidding. Just kidding.
Honestly, I haven't sat in a Clam house or used a Clam house in years. Clam has been very good to ice fish in Minnesota. Matt Johnson is a good friend of mine. We were lucky enough to go and celebrate Dave's 40th anniversary.
Yeah, Dave Gens. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, for his house with him, which was fun, and so I really don't have too much bad to say about other companies' products. And I will. that I will.
No, I know you. I know for sure. No, and I appreciate that. And it's not. And again, it's not to me. It's not to.
Well, yeah, I realize you're not
to crap on a company. I really think that it's important, just to let people know, number one, the consumer out there, what they should avoid, products that they should purchase, that these are good products, well made. I wish there was like a fishing consumer reports, honestly,
Yeah.
So,
to answer that question, if they're because right now there's a ton of new people coming into the sport and stuff. And my suggestion to them would be to stick to the main companies, stick to Otter, stick to Eskimo, stick to Clam, possibly even Fravel. Fravel would probably be a little bit lower on my list. And another thing is that you get what you pay for. I wouldn't suggest that they go out to these companies. I don't know what it's called, but you can buy an auger, a house, and a sled all in one for $400 or something. I wouldn't suggest any of that stuff. Just because you have to look at it as if you do have problems, you want to be able to work with these companies that have this reputation and good customer support. So that's why I would suggest the main companies. And I hate it when people ask me, or even on the pages, well, what's the best whatever?
Just like what I just did?
Yeah, it gets asked.
Like what I just did a few minutes ago?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, because, it's once or twice a week. What's the best custom rod on the market? Well, the thing is, it's a custom rod. So, what's best for me isn't going to be the best for you because my rods are custom to myself.
Right.
It has the twists and the tweaks and everything, the specs that I want. And it's just it goes for the same for houses, to
me, it's the biggest thing for me is I just want it's more about quality. How is the quality? Is this thing is it gonna stand up to the elements? Is it gonna, is it tough? That's more than anything. That's the biggest thing for me, even with even my equipment, open water fishing equipment.
Yeah. And if somebody was just was just hey, I want to buy a house, I want to buy an auger, and I'm going to keep these for the next 20 years. What do you think I should get? I would say a Strike Master, and I would say an Otter house.
Nice.
And if they didn't want to spend that much, I would try to help them out as best as I could with the amount of money that they wanted to spend.
Right.
But
well, this is going to be a wonderful segue because speaking of the amount of money you want to spend in ice fishing, okay, you put a little bit of money into your ice fishing vehicle. And we've talked about this before. Andy has got the most badass ice fishing rig I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've hosted, back in the day, I used to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I worked for a video production company down there, and which was then bought by Outdoor Channel and then became Major League Fishing. Kind of a cool story, but I digress. Down there, I hosted a show. It was on the Outdoor Channel. It's called Roll With It. It was a truck show, and I was the guy that I was the host of the show, and I was the guy that didn't know jack squat about trucks, and so I would go into these like truck communities and just get my hands dirty and learn about trucks and be immersed in the culture. It was actually a really, really fun time. We did a show one time on mini trucks with some dudes in Oklahoma City, and it was badass. But I remember we were so close to doing a show on these little like mini work trucks, and that's exactly what you are using for your ice fishing vehicle. And I've actually got a picture here I want to bring up. I mean, look at this thing. If you're looking at the podcast, the video podcast, it's up right now. Of course, you already know that. If you're looking at the video podcast, you know it's up right now. But I'm showing your rig here, Andy. You got tracks on it. It's got this great bed on it. With plenty of room. The cab is awesome. I mean, to me, it's a better setup than your typical like just side by side. It just seems like there's better creature comfort. I mean, I guess I'd like to know. Just tell me your experience with it. Actually, how we've talked about this in the past, but this is a new podcast era. Tell me about how you found. Just go through the whole thing. How you found it, what you did, and then to get it here, and then what you've done to it to customize it, because it's unbelievably badass.
Well, I was looking for something that get around on the ice. I've used a four-wheeler, kind of wanted a side-by-side. I've always kind of been an oddball, though, and I like to be a little different. And in one of my searches, I ended up running across, one of these trucks, and it was just, because they're basically like Japanese delivery trucks.
Yep.
And they're right-hand drive. And I come across that, and it's just like, wow, that's pretty freaking cool. So then I started digging deeper into them and found out that, get them in four-wheel drive and this and that. And I was like, wow, and I had it pictured in my head beforehand. But then I went and I ended up getting it imported from Japan to a guy in Brainerd. And then mine is a Honda ACTY, it's called, four-wheel drive, has a 660cc motor in the back, or that's actually in the back of the bed, underneath it, of course. And then, first I started out with some ATV tires and rims, which lasted for about a week and a half before I decided I wanted tracks. So then I got a hold of Matt Tracks, and they wanted to see it, so I brought it up to in Carlstead, way up there. Probably one of the most boringest drives I've ever drove in my life.
Where is that at? I don't even know where the hell that is.
It's kind of up by Lake of the Woods.
Okay. I've probably been down. Dude, I've been all over the north, driving and stuff, like for shoots and stuff. So I'm sure I've been around there. Just
east of Lake of the Woods, and right by the border, and it's just so boring. But yes, I brought it up to them, and I kind of let them do their magic on it, and I and that's kind of how it got to where it's at.
So
I guess
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
before I did bring it into Mat Track, so I did put a 3-inch lift in it.
Okay. Okay.
There's a whole underworld of these trucks that I discovered too. It's like there's people that have been doing motor swaps, and there's people that lower them, and there's people that turn them kind of into the Fast and Furious looking things. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And ever since I got mine, I've noticed that I hadn't seen one on the ice ever before, and then now I spot them all the time. But I guess it's no different than if you buy a blue car, you start noticing blue cars more. But
right.
But
so
yeah,
how is it? So is the cab heated?
Yep.
So the cab's heated. I mean, it's basically got all the creature comforts of a typical just vehicle, like
It feels like you're kind of driving like in a little clown car though, because it's
right.
I mean, I'm not a huge person. I'm 6 foot, but it's small.
Sure.
My dad's 6'3", and he can just barely drive it. It's one of those vehicles that if you have a big buddy,
you just throw him in the back. You throw him in the cab, or you throw him in the bed.
Yeah, that you kind of notice that they're there because the truck will go like this.
Okay.
But
how is it? I mean, obviously with the tracks, how is it? I mean, I would imagine it's pretty good in the snow. Like just overall, your experience with different snow conditions, ice conditions, whatever. How is it?
Yeah, I've never been stuck. I pulled a Trailblazer out of a ditch with it once.
Nice.
It's real good in the deep snow and anything. I avoid slush.
Yeah. I've seen, for sure. Slush is, I've seen like side by sides with, with tracks that complete on, I'm trying to think where this was. Well, it doesn't matter, but, side by side with tracks that got completely stuck in slush. And I was like, that's interesting because I had a mentality that just, you can go over anything with tracks. So that's not entirely true.
Yeah.
Slush is a bad deal.
Yeah, you can't really crawl over something that's liquid.
Right.
Can't grip on anything, and that's, it's the same with the 4-wheeler and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it goes up hills, and it's no speed demon by any means, but it has some grunt and some snort to it.
Right on.
It's real torque down.
Well, it's a fantastic piece of ice fishing machinery, and I'd love to see it sometime in person. Sure. And really, there's no reason why. I mean, let's before we wrap up here, let's commit to trying to fish together.
Sure.
At some point, I'd love to. I don't know what you're doing next week, but maybe we can figure something out. Next week's pretty open for me, but I'd love to fish with you because I'd love to learn from you. You're going to know a hell of a lot more about ice fishing. I've filmed a ton of ice fishing. I mean, I filmed 2 seasons of clam webisodes. So I met Matt through and Matt Johnson you're talking about earlier, and Dave Gens from doing that. I really cherish those times filming those 2 years doing those webisodes because it was really cool to meet those guys.
Super nice guys.
Yeah, but there's a ton that I need to learn, and it's great. Like you can get in winter, you can get so cooped up and especially with COVID now, but it's amazing. Like you get a nice day, and especially with a good shelter, doesn't need to necessarily be a nice winter day. It's just great to be out there, and it can be so freaking cozy, And then you got your fishing, you got your ice holes right in front of you, and you're just you're waiting for a bite, you're jigging, or there's something to be said for just relaxing in an ice house, in an ice shelter, and just, you feel confident about the spot you're on, and just like, okay, I'm relaxed, having a beer maybe, and just, it's a pretty great aspect of ice fishing. So, with that being said, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You've been very, very generous, and I've loved the conversation very much. What is there any, like, and I'm not talking secret stuff here, but what going into like 2021, we're fully into 2021 now, for this ice fishing like season, do you know of is there any like bites that you want to do, or you look forward to doing, or you've heard that? I'm not asking for secret stuff, but anything you're looking forward to doing this ice fishing season?
Last year was our first year. We went and we worked with Hometown Heroes, and we took a bunch of vets out fishing on St. Croix to fish for sturgeon.
Right on.
And I had an absolute blast. And so like we've been looking forward to it like pretty much since last year to doing it again. And I would love to get a sturgeon on the river. So that's probably my biggest goal.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, plus
it's just, it's good people to hang out with. It's for a great cause,
And when is that going to be? Go ahead and plug that. When,
I want to say late February, early March, maybe.
And what's the name of it? Just so people can look for it on.
Well, it's Hometown Heroes is the ones who put it on and stuff, and then they pick vets that we bring out. I think last year, there was probably like 20, 25 vets, maybe even more that we took out.
Nice.
And then each vet had a guide assigned with them or whatever. And we just sat around, relaxed. We had good food, fished, and good conversation. And yeah, it was fun.
Dude, it's a hell of a fishery. It's an incredibly unique fishery. Do you know that if you can ice fish for lake sturgeon up at the Rainy River at all? Like, I think it's like, this is like, the St. Croix lake sturgeon thing is like very unique, right? Like, I don't think you can do that anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not a huge river rat.
Yeah,
which I should be, because I can damn near see the river from my house. But yeah, when it comes to sturgeon, catfish, carp and stuff like that, that's really something that I need to get on.
Right on.
And do more of.
Yeah. I've
gotten too snobby.
You've gotten too snobby. You're after those glamour fish.
Yeah.
You like catching them glamour fish.
Yeah, walleyes are nothing.
Those high on the pedestal fish. What's another way to put that? Glamour fish. I need to work on that. But I like catching glamour fish, don't get me wrong, but I also like the less listen, the reality is a common carp, there ain't nothing more glamorous than a common carp in Europe. But you bring a common carp here and people just want to throw it in a dumpster. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Boneheads.
Yeah, absolute bonehead. So, well, dude, I've appreciated it very, very much having this conversation with you. This is like this is like a Joe Rogan podcast, 2-hour-long conversation. I love it, man. I love these.
Everything.
Yeah, you just don't. We got into controversial subjects, both like not even related to fishing at all, but also related to fishing. We covered the gamut here.
Sure.
But I like just like this is a free form. Just again, you're listening to someone at the little area at the gas station where the old guys come together and they just shoot shit with a cup of coffee, and I love that. I've kind of tried to make this set like a behind me, like I want it to look like a Northwoods dive bar. I'm gonna keep adding crap to the back, so it's just like I want that. That's one of the things that I love about fishing. It's not just there's so much to it that I love about it. It's the cultural aspect of it, the people, the places you go, the conversations you have. That to me is just the whole, and I think anybody that really loves fishing pretty much feels the same way. It's just the overall experience is what we live for, and it's not all about the catching. Especially if you're a lousy fisherman, you have to care about the other stuff more. I'm not saying I'm a lousy fisherman. I can be a lousy fisherman, of course. I'm probably a lousy ice fisherman. Andy would kick my ass severely. I'm sure on the ice, especially with that awesome mini truck he's got. So, but thank you, dude. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, man. And I think we're kindred spirits. So we definitely need to get out on the ice. And once the ice breaks, I know it's your least favorite part of the year when that goes away, because I know you're a diehard ice fisherman. But we do need to get in a boat as well together. I think we'd have a really good time, and I'm sure I could learn a lot from you. So thanks again, my friend, and let's do it again sometime.
All right, sounds very good. Thanks again.
All right, thanks, Andy.